Okay. First thing I want to say is that I got a bit of a cold, so my voice will sound a bit funny. It's summer here in Australia, but the virus, flu, whatever it is, doesn't discriminate. It's in winter, summer, autumn, spring. So that's the first thing to mention. Now, as you saw by the title, should women identify with the male image of God? Short answer is no. Let me just read you something I wrote a few years ago about this. Now, this is a very important subject. It's important because you have to understand that when the patriarchy took over from the goddess tradition some 3,000 years ago, the whole goal was to rule the world, and it still does. So when they decided to take over, the image of the feminine, of the goddess, had to be erased. We can find the erasing, the most blatant erasing of the goddess in the Old Testament, in the Jewish tradition, where in about 7th century BC, male priests, Deuteronomists, took over the temple, the first temple or the second temple, can't remember now, and they decided to get rid of the feminine, the goddess, altogether. They have smashed all her images, they destroyed her sacred groves, and they changed the text to erase any history of her. Dr. Margaret Barker goes into this, and she's debunked the Old Testament, where there is a clear changing of the text to get rid of the goddess, the Asherah. Prior to that, Yahweh and Asherah were an item. You know, Asherah was Yahweh's wife, and Yahweh was Asherah's husband. So they were together. Now, when this violent deletion of the feminine happened, we, in our Christian tradition, we have taken on the Old Testament, and what we have is really just two images of the feminine: the Virgin Mary, and the whore, Mary Magdalene. In the Old Testament, in the Jewish text, the text of the Deuteronomy, the feminine, the goddess, is called abomination. So she's rejected outright. And from then on, it actually was earlier than that, but from then on, women were really forced to only have the male image of God. So in our Christian tradition, for instance, the Western Christian tradition, which also is the Muslim tradition and the Jewish tradition, of course, we have God the Father, Son, Jesus, and Holy Ghost. All three are male images. There is no feminine in the Godhead. Yeah. Prior to that, in the goddess tradition, the three parts of the goddess, there were the three parts of the goddess: her earthly incarnation, her universal, as the entire universe, and her as the underworld, or the spiritual part of her, the invisible part of her. So we've got the universal, got the Father, let's say, the earthly Jesus, and that underworld, that spiritual part as the Spirit. So this is what I wrote a few years ago about this problem of forcing women to have only the male image of God. And this is what I wrote. I say this again and again. Women need a goddess image of the holy and cannot identify it with their divine part as the patriarchal male image of God the Father, Christ, Buddha, Shiva, Yahweh, a bearded old man. Yeah? Why? Because you're looking for yourself. Yeah? I will explain in a minute. You're a woman, not a man, unless of course you're an old bearded man in drag, I don't know. So that's the important bit. You can't force yourself, your own divine part, that is to say your inner self, to be male, because you're a woman. You're looking for yourself, your divinity. That is to say, you as what you are, who you are as a woman, is already divine. You're looking for yourself, your own image of divinity, a unique embodiment of divinity as you. So you can't, force another image of the divine, because you won't be you. It'll be just symbolic or be forced on you. The male image will be forced on you because of the patriarchy and its desire to get rid of the feminine completely. Okay? So this is important to understand for women. You are looking, or for men, the male image of the divine, is fine for men. With further work, whether you're a woman or man, like I said, eventually the divine part, your inner self, will have your face. That's why it's important not to try to force the opposite. There are two things here that are at play. First of all is the opposites, and the second is the patriarchy. The opposites is dividedness. This is your rational mind or masculine mind that insists everything must be in opposites, in duality. So, in our society, the physical reality is everything is divided into two. So you have good and evil, saved and damned, chosen and not, and male and female. Yeah. So we think that the opposite to us must be the opposite sex. It's not true. When you're looking for your own self, when you're looking for yourself, you must first of all be your own gender, or a goddess, and then that goddess with further work will have your face. You're the goddess, or a goddess. You're an divine. You are a unique embodiment of the divinity. And it works exactly the same for men. You might choose a god. For instance, you might choose to identify with Christ, but eventually, like I've shown in my dream, where I finally realized that I am too a god, the face of Jesus changed into my face. I am divine. There's a famous dream. Jung had a famous dream regarding this. He walked into a temple. A temple is filled with flowers, and there sits a yogi. Yeah, and he walks up to the yogi. Yogi looks into his face, and the yogi has Jung's face. He woke up in a starter with this. He's his own divine. He realizes here, the dream is showing him that he is the divinity. He doesn't need another one. Do you know what I'm saying? So this is what I said about. This is important for women to understand, because I have a lot of pushback, for instance, on Facebook from some women, that they insist that they're Buddhahood, so they have to identify with the Buddha, for instance. You can if you want, if that makes you feel better, but eventually you're gonna have to drop the Buddhahood as well. You're gonna have to drop any male image, because you are the divinity that you're looking for. Okay, so I'll read a little more of what I wrote. Let me just have a look at the time. Okay, we're fine. Of what I wrote here. I'm trying to explain in this little post of why there are, so much emphasis on women to identify, to have the only male image of God. And here I'm going into what I've just said, the opposites and so on. Now, many people will object, screaming that it's all about the union of the opposites. The opposites, remember, is your rational mind. It sees everything in duality, right? A union of the female with the male. Yes, It's about the mystic wedding with your opposite, your sacred part. But the more conscious this identity, the more the image of the deity will have your own gender. That's right. And as you are looking for your eternal self, yourself, eventually your face. You see? So the more you work on it, initially, a lot of people will just adopt the image of the divine that we have in our Western society, even women. So they will adopt the image of Christ, they will adopt the image of Shiva, for instance, they might adopt the image of Muhammad. Yeah. But with more work, that will change. You will eventually find that you need a goddess image because you're a woman. And eventually that goddess image, that, her face will have your face because you're looking for yourself. You're the divine that you're looking for. Okay, I'll go a little bit further to explain why women insist on having a male image. I find that women who insist their opposite has to be a male grew up in a household where either the father was missing or was ineffective. He didn't play the fathering role as someone who not only takes care of all your practical needs in society, but teaches you the same. Teaches you how to successfully insert yourself into community and how to recover that missing, all-important part of childhood, learning independence. The women will be looking for a father. So that's another, from point of view of psychology, a lot of, there will be women out there that will be looking for the father figure. Maybe the father figure was missing. So they will project their inner self onto a father figure. Someone like Jung, perhaps, And I finally finish with this. And of course, there is the most common unconscious reason. She is still projecting her spiritual part, the self, onto an opposite, male lover. It's, all of us are guilty of this because we seek romance. It's natural. We seek to have a partner. We don't want to be alone in the world. So we're looking for, in the society, in physical reality, there are the opposites. So if you're not having done this work, you're not aware of the fact that you're actually looking for yourself, you're going to be projecting that opposite, the opposite is not the opposite, it's already within you. But you're going to project that onto a male and a male lover. So that's just natural and normal, but you have to realize that eventually you're going to have to drop that your inner self is, a male. You will be yourself. It will be, eventually have your face. You're it. As so many mystics and so many teachers, spiritual teachers have said, Osho said the same thing. I don't remember the exact quote, but he said, you're looking for yourself. So stop trying to force an image that is approved by society for you to take on. Because our society is a patriarchal society, it has the male image of the divinity, especially in Christianity, in Judaism, and in Islam. And it's like I said, in Buddhism as well. There are females in Buddhism, but the main image of the divinity is the Buddha. Or in Hinduism, there are, although the whole religion is based around the river, the goddess Ganges, which is the river, that's the feminine, the water of life. The highest, not the highest deities, the most popular deities are like Shiva. It is a male deity still. You have the goddess like the Durga and so on, but the most important, the most popular deities are still male. And you can see in India that women are being, treated as subhuman. Of course, this is all changing, but it's still there. And that's why, in our, for instance, in our Christian society, in our Western society, women are treated as subhuman because of the myth of the fall in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, God forbid Adam and Eve to eat of the tree, right? And it was Eve that took the apple and told Adam to eat. And so for that, God has thrown Adam and Eve out of out of paradise, Garden of Eden, and have thrown us as humanity into exile here on earth. That's why we don't care about the earth or nature, because it's on the way back to paradise, not realizing that we are already in paradise and already divine. So that's why women are being blamed for this. This was deliberately written as well, the myth of the fall. This was written by the male priests about that time, 7th century BC, when the Asherah was being destroyed in the Middle East, in the Judaic tradition. So that's why women are being, oppressed now for over 2,500 years. Yeah, it's changing. It's changing very, very slowly. The divine feminine is returning, but there is still that, especially in the religious circles, women have to be subordinate to the male, to the men of the family, because he is the only image of God, the male image of God. She's not divine. He is, but she isn't. But I'm doing this video to let you know that this doesn't have to be this way. You don't need to take on the male image of God. You're already divine, so you're looking for yourself. First of all, find a goddess that talks to you. Asherah, Athena, Artemis, Isis is a very popular one, Epona, Freya of the Norse mythology. It was Freya that taught Odin, the chief god of that myth of the Norse mythology, of the Viking mythology. Magic. So you see, it is women that have the capacity to create a connection with the irrational, with the mystical, with the spirit. Well, that's what magic is. Magic opens the door, the mystic door, between the two dimensions. That's how magic happens. And it was she that taught Odin how to do it. Another very important reason is that women are, unique. Every single woman is a unique embodiment of the spirit, if you like, of the divine, of the soul. Is that women have a womb. And it is women that bring the soul into this dimension, a physical dimension of reality. We men, we don't have a womb. There's a lot of talk, in Christianity, in the Old Testament, there's the bosom of Abraham. Who wants the bosom of Abraham? He doesn't have a womb. Women do. Women bring the soul into this world. So you are a direct link between the visible and the invisible. That's the image of the soul, the relationship between the numinous and the phenomenal. You bring the soul. Every single human being on this planet has been brought into this reality through a woman. That is an image of God. That's why, some 3,000 years, especially in the Neolithic, the great goddess was the whole thing. She was the universe, she was the earth, and she was the invisible dimension of the spirit. And women had direct representatives here on planet Earth. It doesn't mean that men were oppressed. Men were not oppressed. Men held important positions in these societies. But women, for instance, didn't have to choose husbands. They were not oppressed by men. You see, she was in charge of her own life. She was autonomous. Yeah, autonomous means that she was free. She wasn't subordinate to a male guardian. This is what it's called in our religion, Western tradition. So this is important. It's an important subject for which I have in the past received a lot of pushback, understandably, because if you don't understand the concept of your own divinity, you're going to insist on a religious translation, on the society translation of what the divinity means. But like I said, first find, I'm speaking to women now, first find an image of a goddess that speaks to you. with further work, you might actually have a dream that the goddess that you've chosen, the image of the inner self that you have chosen, you know, if you talk to it, you create a relationship with her, you build that relationship with her over the years, and you can trust her completely, and she's there for you every day. She gives you advice, she helps you, she gives you the moral support and everything else. Eventually, you will walk into a temple, like I did, look into the Holy Grail, and the image of the divinity has your face. You're it. This is it. Okay? That's what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.